Good morning, and here we are again with story time. We are reading The Intergalactic Audacity of Becky Blueshift, my new middle grade novel. We're going episode by episode every single day. Hopefully you've been with us from the beginning. If not, you can go to YouTube and check out all of the previous entries. And the book can be picked up in paperback and digital at stephenhuman.com. For those of you who have been with us the entire time, if you haven't, then go and watch the other ones and then catch up, because today is day 7. We're on episode 7. For those of you who are all caught up, well, let's just keep going. We are on episode 007. The world is not enough to die another day. Warning, warning, Ada repeated as the ship rumbled like a boulder falling down a mountain. Hull collapse imminent. Nostrellus pulled himself toward Edison's chair and reached for the young man. Drag us out of this dive now! We can't, Becky shouted over the cries of the whimpering pirates. Not with your ship still attached to our hull. If we try, both of our transports will be torn to shreds. Bloodshot eyes, one cybernetic and one organic, stared at Becky with the fury of a purple man at the end of his rope. You did this! You did this on purpose! You better get back to your ship, otherwise we'll all die together, Becky said. Yeah, before I blow your hand off, Ben added. Nostrellus snarled and lunged toward Becky. She pivoted and pushed Ben out of the way, narrowly escaping the captain's clawing fingers. Ada, Becky called, turn off all gravity now! Turning off all gravity. The tremors stopped instantly as Becky lifted off the floor and into a comfortable zero-G environment. Nostrellus waved his hands around like a drowning man trying to grab a hold of anything within reach. Grabbing the back of Edison's chair, Becky spun around and kicked Nostrellus right in the nose. Captain! Tentacle Face yelled while trying to pull his laser pistol from his belt. Like a pinwheel on a summer breeze, Nostrellus tumbled head over heels. Ben did somersaults in place and pushed the pirate with the face tattoo back toward the ground with a gleeful laugh. This is awesome, he giggled. You guys don't weigh anything. Becky, Edison said, voice trembling slightly despite the tranquil lack of gravity. We don't have time for this. We need to get them detached and right our ship before we explode. I'd put your guns away, dummies, Becky warned while pointing at the flames filling the front windows. You heard my friend. You have about 30 seconds to get back to your ship. Otherwise, we're going to be burned up on re-entry. We might not have enough fuel to escape the planet's gravity, but your ship sure does. Tentacle Face and his 2 floating colleagues looked expectantly at the twisting Nostrellus. Captain? Nostrellus barked, holding his nose with both hands while drops of purple blood drifted from between his fingers. Get back on the ship! We'll regroup there! You heard the man, Becky said. And you, Nostrellus pointed, teeth barred like a Centauri gravity shark fighting off an invader. If you survive this, I'm coming for you, and not just for the projector. I'll flay you alive for this! And here I thought you weren't a barbarian, Becky countered. Nostrellus flipped slowly over again with his nose pointing toward the floor. Becky saw her opening and shouted, Ada, turn gravity back on. Gravity re-engaging. Nostrellus slammed face first into the dark metal flooring with a grunt. Becky and Ben both landed on their feet, while the other pirates hit with as much grace as a ballerina wearing concrete shoes. Once again, vibrations tumbled through the ship, reminding Becky of their soon-to-be fatal gambit. That's what you get for pushing my brother, Becky shouted as Nostrellus peeled his face off the floor. Yeah, Ben chorused. Don't get cocky, Becky told herself. Well, maybe you can get a little bit cocky. If you survive. Captain, you okay? Tentacle Face asked as he rushed to his leader's side. Fine, Nostrellus answered, blood covering his teeth, nose looking slightly more crooked than it had before. The ragtag intruders limped toward the hallway as best they could through the shaking and jostling. Nostrellus took the time to look back at Becky before they turned the corner, hate brimming from his stare. Even with his bleeding nose and less than intimidating exit, Nostrellus still sent an uncomfortable shudder down her back. This wasn't over, and Becky knew it. She'd always wondered what it would be like to have an arch-nemesis, like Nitro Nobel had with Dr. Biohack. Now, faced with a pirate's rage, she couldn't help but hope her nemesis would turn out to be someone better than Captain Nostrellis of the Queen la Baba Yaga. Ada, Edison said over the roaring atmosphere, tearing at the hull. Seal the breach on the primary habitation ring as soon as pressure drops. As ordered, Edison Nobel, Ada answered. Get us leveled out, Becky said, rushing to Edison's side in the captain's chair. I can't until the hole in the hull is sealed, he replied. We don't have time, she said. Ben pressed his face to the window as the planet grew closer and closer. Don't worry, we're not going to die. Shut up, Ben! Will you two just let me work for a second? Edison snapped. This is going to be like threading a needle, and it isn't a simulation like your mom trained me on. My mom is the best pirate in the fleet, Ben said, nose still glued to the glass. Just let me work, Edison said. You got this, Edison, Becky replied. I'm not worried. In truth, she wasn't. If her mom was the best aviator in the Armada, then Edison would give her a run for her money. He may not have liked going on adventures or getting dirty, but his skill behind the stick was impressive for a seasoned pilot, let alone a 14-year-old boy. Mom had always gushed about Edison's capabilities, something that had made Becky slightly jealous. Now came the time for him to prove Barbara Blueshift right. Pressure dropping in primary habitation ring, Ada informed. Sealing breach with magnetic nanoparticles. Thank you, Ada, Edison said. The rattling lessened suddenly, turning from an 8.5 earthquake into a slightly less damaging aftershock. Edison placed his finger on the holographic controls on each armrest. All right, we're stabilizing now that the pirate ship is dislodged. You two should sit and get harnessed in. This is going to be a bumpy ride. Ben, Becky said, sit over there by the stasis field. I'll take the co-pilot seat just in case. She buckled herself next to Edison, knowing if anything happened to him, she would be almost useless at the controls. Flying hadn't come naturally for her, so she had avoided studying flight controls and interstellar dynamics more than she cared to admit. I'm locked in, Ben said with a thumbs up. Hold on, Edison yelled. His fingers typed wildly at the control pads. The ship groaned like an old man trying to get out of bed. The flames on the front windows lessened as they pulled out from their swan dive. Mountains drew closer through the glass, and Becky could make out rivers and valleys below. Edison can do this, Edison can do this, Edison can do this, she repeated. The ground rushed toward them, and Becky closed her eyes. It's gonna be close, Edison said, voice calmer than Becky expected. He was in his element. Engines roared, and the ship pulled back without warning. Becky held tight to the chair, realizing if she hadn't been harnessed in, she would have been thrown to the other side of the bridge with enough force to break bone. I think I'm gonna be sick, Ben called. You don't want food now, do you? Edison yelled back. Just land this thing, Becky said. We're close, brace for impact. At the last moment, Becky opened her eyes. Trees rushed by, along with outcroppings of orange stone framed by blue sky. Thrusters thundered, shooting Becky forward in the harness. Blood rushed to her face as if the Loveless had just thrown on the brakes. They slowed but didn't stop. A pine tree smashed into the front windows and splintered into toothpicks, followed by another. The ship hit the dirt, throwing up rocks and debris before finally inching to a halt. A mound of earth pushed halfway up the windows while dust obscured the rest of the view. They had landed. They had survived. Whether they would ever be able to take off again was a whole other problem. Wherever they were, Becky knew they just might be stranded for a very long time. That is the end of episode 7. Tomorrow we will read episode 8, Stuck on a Dope. If you want to pick up the book, it's at stephenhuman.com. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow for story time.